topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
This is Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. Do you want to live a more fulfilling life? Do you want to live your legacy and achieve your personal, professional, and financial goals? Well, coming up on Divya Parekh's Beyond Confidence, you will hear real stories of leaders, entrepreneurs, and achievers who have stepped into discomfort, shattered their status quo, and are living the life they want. You will learn how relationships are the key to achieving your aspirations and financial goals. Moving your career or business forward does not have to happen at the expense of your personal or family life, or vice versa. Learn more at www.divyaparekh.com, and you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. This is Beyond Confidence, and now here's your host, Divya Parekh.
Good morning. It's Tuesday, and I love being with you. So I want to share another kind of story with y'all. This was so amazing. One of you actually reached out, and I want to thank you, Lisa, for reaching out to us, because I love when you all share your stories with us. So I want to talk about Lisa. Lisa is from Kentucky, and Lisa shared that while she was taking her daughter to school a regular day, and what happened was when she was picking up her daughter, she found out that somebody's mom could not reach on time. And as it turned out, she knew the kid's mom. So what she did was she asked the school if they could put her on a speakerphone and connect. So this was, I think, so after school daycare program or something like that. And the mom said that she was stuck in traffic, could not pick up the kid. And Lisa stays very close to the other kid's house. So the mom, who was delayed in traffic, gave permission for Lisa to take the kid with her and drop off. So not only Lisa took the kid, and the kid played, fed him with her daughter, they played, and then the mom came and picked up the kid and was able to breathe a big sigh of relief. So what a beautiful story of kindness. So folks, keep the kindness circle going and keep sharing your stories, and we'll be sharing it out. Yes, across all different platforms, because we want to celebrate you. We want to share your story so that we can keep the kindness circle going. And for those of you who have got our books, whether it is the Entrepreneur's Garden or Expert to Influencer, thank you, thank you, thank you. Because I cannot tell you, we are so grateful, because part of the profits go to kiva.org, where we are helping entrepreneurs all across the globe. And also we want to help you through our books so that you can live the life you deserve while making an impact. So let's bring in our guest. Welcome, Maisie.
Thank you. It's fantastic to be here.
Fantastic to have you. So share with us, if you recall, a moment or a person from your childhood that left a mark on you.
When I was 3, my parents moved us to Kathmandu, Nepal. And so I have some very early formative memories of being in a place that was about 180 degrees different than the life we had had in California. And I think that global perspective from a young age is what set me in some ways on my course towards sustainability, of understanding that there is a world larger than you and that your actions impact many in many places.
Mm-hmm. That is so true, because every action, as it says, right, in the law of physics, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So that definitely plays into it. So as you grew, what were your interests and what were you like in your high school?
Well, I decided at the age of 9 that I wanted to be a hotel manager. And I don't know where that idea came from, except that we had traveled a lot. We certainly had not stayed in fancy hotels, but somehow that idea of hospitality and of travel really appealed to me. So I did every school paper, every school project around hospitality. And when I was 12, I even did an informational interview with the largest hotel manager that I could find, which was the Holiday Inn in Santa Cruz. And I interviewed a man named Dietrich Ponke, who was so kind to me as a 12-year-old to come and do an interview. It wasn't for a school project at that point. It was just because I was interested and wanted to learn more. And I've looked for him to thank him, but I can't find him. If anybody out there knows Dietrich Ponke, I would love to say thank you.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And that's amazing. See, one thing that I love about children is that if they have a dream, they go after it. You did
Yes.
not think about, oh, this is not possible. This is the obstacle. You just went for it, reached out, got an interview. And then what happened next? Where did your life take you?
I went to the Cornell Hotel School in pursuit of that hospitality dream. While there, it shifted for me somewhat from hotels to restaurants. It seemed to me that there was more room for creativity and reinvention in restaurants and with food than with a hotel, which at the time seemed like mainly a building with a front desk and some rooms. Probably the limits of my own imagination. I'm sure there is a lot of creativity that can happen within the four walls of a hotel. But I was really fascinated by the fast pace of the restaurant industry and all of its different incarnations. And I worked in everything from fast food, working for the Taco Bell Corporation, to private clubs, the Greenwich Country Club and the Country Club in Brookline, Massachusetts. But really my second job out of college was with Bon Appétit Management Company. And that was in 1994. And I wound up staying for 30 years. It was quite a ride.
Mm. So you mentioned that, you've worked in different places and you have seen high end, you have seen the regular end and the fast food, which is completely a different entity in its own. So how would you compare these different entities?
Well, I think that success in all of them comes with meeting the customer's expectations. And the customer's expectations are very different in a fast food restaurant versus in a private club or fine dining. But we all go into each of those types of establishment with some vision of what we think should happen. And so to meet those and, if possible, even exceed those leads to success. I had a professor in college that used to say, success equals customers' expectations minus your performance. And that really stuck with me. And so I think that there is a universality to all of it in terms of, again, meeting people's expectations, delivering the product. When I was at Taco Bell, for example, they had an acronym called FACT. You were after fast, F-A, accurate, that what people ordered is what they got, clean, the restaurant should be clean, and temperature, F-A-C-T, the food should be hot. So never in there did they say authentic, never did they say taste great, right? But they said that the Taco Bell customer wanted their food fast, accurate, clean, and at the right temperature. And I think it's really clear to understand what you're delivering. In my book, You Can't Market Manure at Lunchtime, I talk about creating a brand based on sustainability. And to do that authentically and to avoid greenwashing, you have to truly deliver and meet people's expectations about what sustainability means. So you have to define it, you have to measure it, and you have to report on it.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely some very powerful nuggets out there. Now, let's kind of like bring it down since we are talking about fast food. So fast food is a franchise. They've got a whole process and system behind it. Now let's take a entrepreneur who opens up their own restaurant. It could be a mom and pop's thing, it could be a pizza place, it could be a Mexican place, it could be anything. So if they were starting out, let's say even if before they start out, what would be few things that they need to go through so that they are very clear on expectations and their business model?
Well, if you're starting even one restaurant, I think it's really critical to write things down in a way you would if you were going to franchise it, like a traditional fast food restaurant. You want customers to have a consistent experience. So that means that the same dish is prepared the same way every time. I worked at a restaurant startup, a small chain called World Wraps in the mid 90s. And the initial World Wraps restaurant on Chestnut Street in San Francisco was hip and cool and happening, and it attracted these really creative young people to work there. And when we came in and wrote down the recipes, I remember somebody said to me, I get the impression that you want me to make the same wrap every day in the same way. And I said, yes, you've got it. I want the same recipe every day. And he said, well, that doesn't take into account my culinary creativity. And I thought, you're right, it doesn't. But the customers expect the same dish to be prepared the same way every day. So even if you have just one place, a mom and pop, as you said, a pizza place, a deli, the first step is to memorialize how you want the customer experience to go, from the greeting to the ordering, to the preparation of the food, to the checkout. It all needs to be thought through and written down so it can be taught and replicated.
So basically, what you're saying is it doesn't matter who comes or who goes, you're creating a whole system. So whether it's a chef, whether it's the person who is checking somebody out or greeting someone, whether somebody leaves, they have a system that's replicated.
Absolutely. And then there's room for creativity in specials and in wowing people, going above and beyond that system. But you first need to have the foundations of your business outlined.
So going back to what you said, that, the chef said, what about my culinary creativity? What would you tell to that person if, and we may have listeners who may be thinking about that?
Yeah.
How would you address that?
So to that young man, we said, yes, you have to make these wraps the same way every day. But on the side, why don't you use that culinary creativity to come up with some new ideas? And we'll take a look at those. Maybe they become specials. Maybe they get added to the menu. I myself, who am not a chef, even came up with a new wrap that I pitched to our culinary director and wound up becoming a consistent menu item at all World Wrap stores. So there is room to use that creativity and to dream and to think differently, but it needs to be done within the framework so that the customer still knows what to expect.
Got it. So I'm curious, what's behind the consistency?
What's behind the consistency?
Yeah, so why, from your perspective, the same thing needs to be delivered to the customer? Is it because is the customer looking for comfort, or is it looking for like, okay, if I come here, I know what I'm getting? What is the psychological reasoning behind that?
It's, again, going back to meeting people's expectations. So if you go into a pizza place and you order a pepperoni pizza slice every day, and you go in one day and not only does it have pepperoni, but it also has green peppers on it, that's discordant to your expectation. And it may not be a welcome surprise. Maybe you don't like green pepper, or for whatever reason, that's not what you expected, and therefore it becomes wrong. And so you want to look for ways for the unexpected to be right. And that can be done. In my book, I interviewed David Kinch, the chef owner of Manresa, a 3-star restaurant. And at Manresa, they don't give the menu until the end of the meal. So you don't know what's coming. And the surprise is part of the expectation. When you go into a 3 Michelin star restaurant, you are going in to experience in some ways the chef's mind, his ultimate or her ultimate creativity. So your expectation is not that you are going to get to look at a menu and order. It's that you're going to be wowed and surprised and delighted and maybe challenged a bit or pushed into new flavors you didn't know. But that is what you expect. And then at the end, David would deliver the menu so you had an idea of what you had that you could remember and a little takeaway.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. And when we compare, it's again, what is your establishment? What are you putting out? So basically what you're sharing is that the message that you're putting out, that this is what you can expect when you come to our pizza place or fast food or country inn or a hotel, whatever it is. And then you meet the expectations because you have built those expectations. And when the client is coming or when the customer is coming, then they're like, yeah, this is a place where it's consistent, where I can go and I will get what I want.
Yeah, I think of it as delivering your brand's promise. What have you promised your customers, and then are you delivering it? And we're talking about it in the context of restaurants, but it goes to any industry. Think about even when you've had a chance to try out a software product in beta. And maybe your expectation is that you're going to see something totally new because it's a beta version. And therefore you accept that there's some bugs or some pieces of the UX that don't work quite well. But if you're buying a product that has been on the market for years, your expectation, of course, is that there's no bugs, that the UX is very clean. So even in something as different from restaurants as software, we still deal with the customer's expectations and meeting them.
Absolutely. So now moving into the sustainability area. So when you talk about that every action has an impact. So tell us more about how do you define sustainability in the restaurant business, and how can owners start putting things into place so that they can beef it up?
Well, I do think it's important to start with defining sustainability. For years, I kind of skated on saying sustainability is like what the Supreme Court said about pornography. I can't define it, but I know it when I see it. And that got a lot of laughs when I gave talks, but it didn't really speak to the true importance of sustainability and pinning things down. At Bon Appétit Management Company, we crowdsourced a definition of sustainable food service from all of our employees because we wanted everyone to really feel bought into our commitment to sustainability. And we wound up with a lot of words, with a very long sentence that included things like the air, the earth, water, but also farmers and farm workers and even animals. So we wound up with this kind of laundry list of things to care about, and that became a sounding board in some ways that we could test purchasing standards against and say, how does this purchasing decision impact the air, the water, the land, the farmers, the farm workers, and the animals? And so it was a real active definition of sustainability for us.
Interesting. So can you expand on that?
Yeah. So it started our road towards sustainability, and I would say towards because sustainability is not a destination. It's a journey. We are never going to arrive and say, check, we are sustainable, right? We have systems that are complex, that are ever changing. And so sustainability is kind of a moving goal in some ways. But that's also what's fun about it and what the part of the mind challenge is. So a path towards sustainability started with local purchasing. And really, at first, it was a culinary act, not a political one. We wanted food that tasted great. And we all have these food memories. You started this conversation talking about a childhood memory. Many of us have childhood food memories. If you grew up in a place like California or New Jersey where tomatoes grew, you can remember taking a tomato off of the vine and biting into it like an apple and just bursting with flavor. And yet today, if you go to a supermarket, a tomato is red, but often hard and not so juicy and kind of mealy. And I myself always, at any deli, I always order a sandwich without tomatoes because a great tomato is fantastic, but a bad tomato I really hate. So when did a tomato become like a risk-reward decision? And looking into that, I discovered that food was being bred to travel. Food was being bred to sit on a shelf for the longest time possible and to look pretty. And nowhere in that equation was flavor. And so as a food company, we wanted the best ingredients. And that led us to looking for the small local farmers that were growing more biodiverse products, that were growing for flavor, that the food didn't have to travel as far or sit on a shelf for so long. And once we did that, that really opened my eyes and the eyes to the rest of our company about the power of purchasing in food and how we can make decisions to support different types of systems. And that's a very, very powerful idea.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's where, not sure when the concept came through farm to table, that rather than having ingredients that are sitting on the shelf and traveling and are probably days and sometimes weeks old, but you're getting fresh food. And I've also seen in so many restaurants, you see, especially if they have a back, they have like little potted plants, or even if it's on the ground, like, little garden, and they're growing their own herbs and all that. And there is just something to it, because I know of a local restaurant that has something like that, and it's just the smell. And as you talked about, having that tomato, or it can be anything, right? Like fruits, just fruits that have come directly from farm to you, or anytime, like, anybody has gone for apple picking or blueberry picking, and just taking those blueberries off the bush and eating, those plum juicy, there's a burst of juice in your mouth and that burst of flavor. Nothing
Absolutely.
can compare to it. So you've talked
So
about, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, you asked about the birth of farm to table, and many people trace that back to Chez Panisse and Alice Waters, really looking at ingredients differently in California. For us at Bon Appetit, it came in 1999. That was our awakening to the importance of local food. But at that point, we didn't think that customers would care about the story of the farmers. And that sounds silly now, but there was no one talking about supply chain. There was no one talking about sourcing. There was no one talking about where your food comes from. We thought that people would care because the food would taste better. Therefore, they would come more often to our restaurants. But it wasn't until 2005 that a woman named Jessica Prentice actually coined the term locavore. And at that point, my CEO said to me, "Put out a brochure. People care about this stuff." And we were in the great position to have our practices already in place, to already have relationships with farmers, to already be cooking in this way, and then be able to market it. And I think that's really the correct order of operations for a business, is to have operations be the forerunner and marketing be the laggard, versus marketing pushing an idea and then trying to get operations to catch up with, again, that promise that they're making to customers.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So that definitely makes sense, that, if you're purchasing from local farmers, you're helping those farmers thrive because they have a consistent chain and consistent orders that are coming throughout the year, and they know they can predict, okay, you know what, this is my projection, I can grow accordingly, and this is where I know where it's going. So, in what other way sustainability can be introduced?
Well, we've been talking about local purchasing, and that's one dynamic of sustainability, but there's many, and I'll stick with the restaurant industry. There's the other end of the chain, which is waste. Food waste is incredibly unsustainable, both in that you are wasting all of the embodied energy that went into producing that food. So the growing, the transporting, the refrigerating, the cooking, the serving of that food has a huge amount of emissions impact. And then when you throw food away, it goes to landfills where it turns into methane gas, which is a much more powerful greenhouse gas than even carbon dioxide. So food waste is a real sinkhole when it comes to sustainability. And I think just if we think about that kind of cradle to grave idea of the birth of your product, in this case, local farms, and then the death of your product, in this case, landfills, and even reimagine it to be circular. How can we have a circular system where we're not just going cradle to grave, but we are actually reusing and upcycling products? That's when we can start getting at real sustainability.
Definitely. I remember watching a Shark Tank episode where there was this girl which she had come up with, where she was going and getting the food, like, recyclables or something like that, and she recycled into chips. I'm not sure, like, how she did it. So what are different ways where people can estimate ahead of time that, okay, you know what, this is the type of food, this is how much quantity is coming, and what can they do to recycle it?
Yeah. So there's been a couple Shark Tank episodes that have had food waste reduction businesses, and there's been a whole crop of them that have cropped up. Misfit Foods, Imperfect Foods, and they're doing different things. They're either selling products to people that had otherwise previously been determined to be unsellable because they were maybe cosmetically challenged, misshapen, not the right color, not the right size. We have a program called Imperfectly Delicious Produce, where our chefs use things like what we've called sun-kissed cauliflower. So when cauliflower grows, it has leaves around it. If the leaves get pulled back in the field for some reason, the sun touching the cauliflower turns it a golden color, makes golden spots. Doesn't affect the taste, but affects the cosmetic appearance. So that's not considered sellable, except it tastes the same way. So if you rebrand it and called it sun-kissed cauliflower and make it intentional, then chefs chop it up and put it into a soup or into an aloo gobi, which is going to have a ton of turmeric anyway and turn everything yellow. Then this product that was previously seen as waste now becomes useful. So that's one kind of way people are reusing food, is not throwing away things that were previously thought to be unusable. The other is upcycling. So maybe this chip company that you saw might be an example of that, where you take a product that's a cast off. If you've ever seen broccoli slaw in the supermarket, which is shredded broccoli stalks. So previously, when produce companies made packages of broccoli florets, they had to throw away the stalk. The stalk was considered not usable. And then somebody had the bright idea of shredding that stalk and calling it slaw. And all of a sudden now broccoli stalks are even more valuable than broccoli florets. So that's upcycling food, using something that would have been thrown away in a new way.
Yeah, no, definitely some very bright ideas out there. And so many times what happens is that, even for homeowners, I've seen that you can bring a recyclable, it's a kind of container, and then you have to kind of keep it turning, and you can create manure. So any ideas on that?
Composting.
Yes, compost.
Yeah. So I think that there are probably very few of us that are going to have real compost piles at our homes. Fantastic if you do. But if you live in a city and you're in an apartment or you don't have space to do that, a lot of municipalities have actually started what they call curbside composting. So you separate, just like you'd separate your glass and your cans from your garbage, you can also separate your yard clippings, and you can even separate your food waste. And it gets picked up and composted at an industrial scale. And I think that's the way of the future. However, the EPA has something that they call their food recovery hierarchy, and it looks at different the most important ways to reduce food waste. And the most important one is to reduce waste at the source. So the first thing is not to have waste at all. Then we go down to using waste to feed hungry people. Can we do food recovery and actually capture edible food that would otherwise have gone to waste and feed the hungry, as we unfortunately have so many of in this country and around the world?
Yeah.
Then we go down into things like composting, and our landfill should be our last resort.
Got it. So now, as we bring it back to the restaurant industry, what could the restaurant business owners do for either upcycling? I'm not very familiar with the back end, because there's so much food. Can they form alliances with nonprofit organization where people are picking up the food that's been remaining to feed the hungry? And as you mentioned, we have a lot of hungry people, and especially so many children, that we could, as we are talking about.
Yeah. So again,
sensitive issue. So
we start with trying to avoid food waste to begin with. And there's lots of things in a restaurant design that can work towards that aim. Your menu design, are you cross-utilizing ingredients? So you have something that can do double duty. And therefore, if you don't sell a lot of one dish, you still use the ingredient in another, that sort of thing. Soups are a great way to use ingredients that didn't sell the day before. You then throw them all into a stock pot and simmer, and get a rich broth that will then be the basis of many, many different things. So first, you've got your menu design, your operations design. And what I mean by that is, do you operate your kitchen by cooking everything at the morning and then hoping you sell it throughout the day? Or are you cooking a la minute or just in time so that you're not overproducing? You're cooking just as people are coming into the restaurant and ordering. That's a great waste reduction tool. Are you using the whole animal? You call it nose to tail cooking or root to stem when you talk about vegetables. Are you throwing away the carrot tops, or can you actually pickle those carrot tops and use them as a little bit of bite in a salad? Can you reutilize the trimmings of things? So first we look at ways we can reduce waste. Then we turn to recapturing that edible leftovers and donating those to people. And there are many organizations across the country that will come to a restaurant and pick them up, from Food Runners in San Francisco to Feeding America, which is a national network of food banks. There are many resources to tap into finding someone to come pick up your edible leftovers.
Well, this has definitely sparked a lot of ideas in my head as I'm thinking through that what waste I am doing. So usually I've got a couple of neighbors who do the composting, and I've seen them do it, but as you mentioned, that it may not be a feasible option. So it's, even as individuals, not just the restaurants, business owners, we can think about where we can reduce waste, because at the end of the day, each and every one of us is generating waste, and thinking about how we can reduce that so that, as you mentioned, earth, air, animals, planet, how we can create that impact and footprints. So where can people find you? Where can they connect with you if they want to learn more about you?
People can go to MaisieGanzler.com. I know it's a lot of letters, but my name is written there under my picture. So MaisieGanzler.com, or search for me on Amazon. My book is called You Can't Market Manure at Lunchtime and Other Lessons from the Food Industry on Creating a More Sustainable Company. It's available on Amazon now. Just search Maisie in books and you'll find me.
Oh, fantastic. And for individuals, for anyone who's listening, what might be your last couple, 1 to 2 practical tips that they can take and apply it straight away?
Yeah. So you talked about home cooking and how we can be more sustainable there. How about just starting with what we call in my household the refrigerator challenge, which is going to the refrigerator, opening it up, and creating a meal from whatever is in there, as opposed to shopping for new products or letting things go to waste in your own home. And you can, there's so many tools to Google recipes. Just pick something out of your own house and make something delicious. Challenge yourself to do that.
Definitely. So I'll definitely be challenging myself today.
Think stir fries and soups. Those are your 2 friends, stir fries and soups.
Yeah, you can drop anything in stir fry and soup. So yeah, definitely a good way of thinking. And so thank you for joining us, Maisie. You have given us a lot of food for thought.
Thank you very much. I appreciate being here.
Absolutely. Well, listeners, thank you for joining us because you are the soul of the show. Share with us your stories. Keep the kindness circle going and let us know who can we bring. How can we support you and serve you to live the life you deserve and you want? And thank you, Juan, for making the show technically possible.
Thank you.
Thank you for being part of Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. We hope you have learned more about how to start living the life you want. Each week on Beyond Confidence, you hear stories of real people who have experienced growth by overcoming their fears and building meaningful relationships. During Beyond Confidence, Divya Parekh shares what happened to her when she stepped out of her comfort zone to work directly with people across the globe. She not only coaches people how to form heart connections, but also transform relationships to mutually beneficial partnerships as they strive to live the life they want. If you are ready to live the life you want and leverage your strengths, learn more at www.divyaparekh.com. And you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. We look forward to you joining us next week.